Warning, this episode may contain disturbing content, soothing narration, and mild existential dread. Basically, murder ASMR for stressed professionals. Listener discretion is advised. Hell, it might be necessary.
It began as an accident. Whether caused by inexperience, malfunction, or inattention doesn't ultimately matter. It was an accident. A tongue of flame ignited by a stage light climbing a curtain overhead. It did not grow unseen in the dark. It had spectators, hundreds of them, probably more than 1,000. And when the spotlight went out on the stage at the Iroquois Theater in Chicago, Illinois, what that flame illuminated could never be unseen. The consequences of that moment still carry weight more than 100 years later. The fire would claim roughly 600 lives, though estimates vary. And we can identify with unsettling clarity the factors that turned a small fire into a mass casualty event. But many of the ordinances meant to prevent those failures already existed. But one critical element was missing: accountability. In the end, the victims and the families of the hundreds of people, mostly women and children, who perished, were denied justice. Not because the truth was unknown, but because the laws meant to protect them were unenforceable. This was a failure on every level: a false sense of security in a fireproof building, safety ordinances ignored, and an incomplete structure allowed to open to the public. But the final insult was this: no one could be held legally accountable. And legal accountability is not the same as moral accountability. Plenty of people had the opportunity to do the right thing. They didn't. Like so many disasters throughout history, the lessons were learned only through unimaginable loss. And some of those lessons we continue to relearn over and over again. Because while this fire happened more than a century ago in Chicago, the mistakes that killed hundreds of people are mistakes we still make today. Sometimes out of ignorance, but often out of a false sense of security. The same false sense of security that led the owners of the Iroquois Theater to proudly advertise their building as completely fireproof. And they weren't wrong. After the fire, the structure still stood, minimally damaged. Fireproof. It stood there holding the remains of roughly 600 people. This is Fireproof, the Iroquois Theater Fire, right now on Crime to Burn. Welcome to Crime to Burn, where we explore the dark city landscape where true crime intersects with arson and criminal negligence. Join us as we sift through the ashes to bring you the story of what really happened. Welcome back to Crime to Burn. I'm April, a fire protection engineer, former firefighter, and a lifelong opponent of the word fireproof.
And I have minimal enthusiasm, but I'm here for you because I love ya.
We are honored that you joined us today, and if you'd like to listen to this episode ad-free, you can do that over on Patreon. The link is in the show notes, because Steve has already set your seat up at the sacred snack table, so come on and belly up. And if supporting the show financially isn't something you're able to do right now, that is completely okay. Crime to Burn will always remain free on your favorite podcast platforms with ads. But what we do need desperately is your help with engagement. Please leave us 5-star ratings and reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and if you're able, that written review is a huge help. That engagement and those comments on those episodes are our lifeblood.
Santa told us personally that a 5-star review is like in lieu of cookies. You don't have to leave cookies because they attract roaches.
Right. Now, to put this in perspective, we reach over 4,500 listeners every month, and right now we have 59 ratings on Apple Podcasts and 60 on Spotify. And I have a $1,500 court bill staring me directly in the face for records. So if you value the level of in-depth research that you have come to expect from the show, helping us grow our audience is how we manage to keep doing this work.
Not to mention all the lawyer fees to keep me out of prison.
Huge thanks this week to Sharkrider 12, Lynn Liu 1986, and Dana 1583, and Want My Game Back for leaving us written reviews on Apple. You are this week's MVPs, and Steve has set aside the good snacks for you. If you left us a 5-star rating without a written review, I cannot see who you are, but please know that you are deeply appreciated. And if you don't know how to leave a review, just email me. I will walk you through it because it really is that important. If your holiday shopping isn't quite done, or even if it is, don't forget our spread shop. The link's in the show notes. We've got shirts, hoodies, and mugs, and it's never too early to plan for Valentine's Day or to buy yourself something nice. You can also help us grow by following us on X, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Your likes, follows, comments, and shares help us survive the algorithmic maze, and that growth is how this show gets paid for the truly monumental effort that goes into it every single week. And for those of you in the inner sanctum of the Patreon, your annual gifts are absolutely badass, and we expect them to ship before the end of January.
Did you consider when you said inner sanctum and then annual right after that it might be like rectal adjacent?
I didn't, but I'm going to leave it because I feel like that's just
it's fine.
How we roll.
It's fine. I was just curious.
As always, email us your case suggestions, fire stories, feedback, and your most unhinged family holiday stories at crimetoburn@gmail.com. Before we get started, I need to share something important because I need your help. We have learned through our podcast groups that certain organizations are running recruitment ads or political ads on podcasts, and in some cases, they are misclassifying those ads in order to bypass creator restrictions. For example, when we run ads on this show, we only approve the time slots and the categories, and we explicitly exclude political and religious advertising on our show. But we've heard that there are organizations misclassifying their ads in order to bypass those restrictions. So if you hear a religious or a political ad anywhere on our show, please email me, because the way it works is I set the ad time slots and every region has specific ads. So every week I get pages and pages and pages of ads, and I can go through and unapprove one, but I can't tell from the descriptions what they are, and I don't have time to listen to 20 pages of ads to make sure that they all fall into the categories that we have approved. So if you hear one that falls into one of those two categories, will you please email me at crimetoburn@gmail.com so I can locate it and remove the approval for it. Thank you. This isn't a place to debate politics and religion. That's all. Now let's get back to the reason you're here. December 30th, 1903, Chicago. A brand new theater called the Iroquois Theater had just opened 5 weeks earlier to enormous fanfare. It was a showpiece, a source of civic pride, and that matters because Chicago's relationship with fire was already quite complicated. You see, the Great Chicago Fire had burned from October 8th through October 10th in 1871, just 32 years earlier. And that fire reshaped the city both physically and psychologically. And as a result, Chicago developed a mild obsession with controlling fire risk, understandably. And to be clear, this was not unique to Chicago. In many U.S. cities at the time, fires didn't just destroy individual buildings. In the worst cases, they became citywide conflagrations, and entire neighborhoods could be leveled.
I love that word, conflagration. Could we define that for a moment?
All right, the official definition is an extensive fire which destroys a great deal of land or property.
I'm somehow
underwhelmed.
Underwhelmed.
I know, it's a very powerful word, but that's the official definition. So our earliest fire and building ordinances were not really about individual life safety. They were really about preventing cities from burning down. And that's why early codes focused on things like fire separations, exterior wall construction, and finish requirements. Measures designed to slow or stop fire from spreading block to block. It wasn't actually until the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire in 1911 that fire and building codes truly began to center more on life safety. Things like means of egress, occupancy limits, and worker protections. And part of the momentum that led to those changes came from the fire that we're talking about today, the Iroquois Theater Fire. Because the Iroquois wasn't old, it wasn't run down, and it was not cheaply built. It was a brand new building made from what were considered the finest materials available. Construction was estimated at about $1.1 million in 1903, which would be roughly $37 million in today's dollars. It was built out of stone and steel, materials that don't readily burn. And its most impressive claim? The building was advertised as completely fireproof. So much so that the public was told you were safer sitting inside the Iroquois Theater than you were in your own home. But here's the thing, dear listener. When we talk about fire risk, what burns is what you put inside the building. You can make a structure entirely out of concrete and steel, but the moment you lay down carpet, add upholstered seating, or hang decorative curtains, you are no longer fireproof. You are a tinderbox waiting for a match. And that makes this an appropriate time to mention that my primary source for this episode is a book entitled Tinderbox by Anthony P. Hatch, published by Academy Chicago Publishers, and I will link it in the show notes. But, in the interest of being fully transparent, this is a fire that I have studied for most of my career. I actually teach a class that includes the Iroquois Theater Fire, and some of what I'll be sharing today may come from those decades of research and professional study. But if you're looking for a very well-researched, well-cited source to go deeper, Hatch's book is a thorough, thoughtful presentation of the fire, and it's worth your time. As Chicago rebuilt after the Great Chicago Fire, it became, at least on paper, more concerned with fire protection than many other American cities that had not suffered the same level of devastation. The city was rebuilding with ambition. Chicago wanted to be a model city, a destination city. But rebuilding with good intentions doesn't mean rebuilding without problems. Chicago's reputation for corruption, dirty politics, backroom deals, and bribery was already firmly established by 1903, and fire safety was not immune from that culture. So while Chicago rebuilt itself boasting its fire safety priorities, enforcement was another story.
Chicago, boasting corruption for over 100 years.
In a city where money talked and rules bent easily, even life safety ordinances could become optional. And even though the United States had not yet fully embraced the life safety aspects of fire protection regulations, Chicago was, at least in theory, ahead of the curve. Beyond advertising the Iroquois Theater as fireproof, the building was specifically designed to allow the entire facility to be evacuated in just 5 minutes. And that claim wasn't casual. The architect publicly boasted that he had studied every major theater fire to date, using those disasters to help him design a building that would keep Chicago's theater goers safe. But like most opulent things, the cracks appear if you look too closely. The Iroquois Theater was constructed in only 5 months, an astonishing timeline for a building of that size and complexity, even by early 20th century standards. And Chicago was dealing with labor unrest in several industries. Men were striking across the city. Some of those strikes even affected the work indirectly, like rail strikes, disruptions that made it impossible or difficult for skilled workers to even get to job sites. To keep the project on schedule, construction firms pushed forward anyway. As experienced workers became unavailable, whether through strikes or an inability to travel, they were often replaced quickly, and frequently that meant hiring less skilled or less experienced labor to keep that tight timeline intact. Speed was prioritized, deadlines were protected, and the assumption, once again, was that the building itself would compensate for everything else. And while inspections by the fire department did note deficiencies, the fire inspector later indicated that he had believed those issues would be corrected before the building was occupied. But they were not, because attention wasn't on deficiencies, it was on spectacle. A brand new, opulent theater rivaling the elegance and scale of any major U.S. city stood as a symbol of Chicago's resilience after the Great Chicago Fire. And that timing mattered. The holiday season of 1903 promised full houses and sold-out shows. Delaying the opening for what were viewed as minor inconveniences, things like code deficiencies, was simply unthinkable. In the race between safety and spectacle, safety never really entered the competition. December 30th's matinee was expected to be the largest crowd the Iroquois Theater had ever seen. With children out of school for winter break and the festive stretch between Christmas and New Year's, the house was absolutely packed. The show was Mr. Bluebeard, starring comedian Eddie Foy, and featured music, dancing, and even aerial performers. Now, when we talk about theaters, there are a few things you need to understand from a fire and life safety perspective. First, any assembly occupancy presents unique risks. One of the primary ways we limit fire spread in buildings is through compartmentation. Walls and floors that divide large interior spaces into smaller sections that slow the movement of smoke and fire. But theaters don't have that luxury. In a large auditorium, you have one vast open space. Once a fire starts, there's nothing separating a significant portion of the audience from the hazard except for time, the time it takes everyone to get out. And stage productions add another layer of risk. Lighting systems, electrical rigs, special effects, and open flames all can create ignition sources. Combine those with flammable scenery, curtains, and elaborate costumes, and theaters were already well known by the early 1900s as a uniquely difficult fire protection challenge. And sprinklers did exist by 1903. And Chicago's ordinances required them in theaters at the time. But the Iroquois Theater did not have sprinklers. What it did have was a fire-resistant proscenium curtain. A proscenium curtain is a required life safety feature in theaters designed to separate the stage from the audience. Its purpose is simple. If a fire starts on stage, the curtain drops and seals the opening, preventing flames and smoke from spreading into the auditorium. We still use this concept today. Modern proscenium curtains are made from non-combustible fiberglass or similar materials. In 1903, they were made of asbestos. Another fire protection feature in use at the time of the Iroquois fire was smoke and heat vents. These were openings in the auditorium roof designed to automatically open during a fire, allowing the smoke and hot gases to escape upward and out of the building. The goal was to slow how quickly that smoke layer could bank down to the occupied space, especially to protect those people in the upper balconies. They were intended to give people more time to escape before they would be overcome by smoke. You may not see smoke and heat vents in many modern sprinkler-protected theaters, and that's because opening roof vents can actually reduce the effectiveness of sprinkler systems by altering heat and smoke movement. But the Iroquois Theater did not have sprinklers. In a non-sprinklered theater, smoke and heat vents could absolutely have been a critical life safety feature, or they should have been, because it turns out they were never fully completed. Only one smoke and heat vent, located near the rear of the auditorium above the audience, was functional. The other vents, including the one over the stage where the fire was most likely to occur, they were unfinished. And because they were unfinished, they were bolted shut. And then there were the fire escapes. On the upper level of the theater, the fire escape was nothing more than a platform to nowhere. The stairs that were supposed to lead down from it had never been completed or installed. Even on the lower levels where the fire escapes did have stairs, they ended up proving useless during the fire. As the fire intensified, flames blew out through the doors and windows on the exterior of the building below those stairs, and anyone attempting to use those fire escapes would be forced to descend directly through fire venting from the openings below. So what were intended to be paths to safety became corridors of flame. And for many people who reached those doors believing escape was possible, there was just nowhere left to go. But the audience filing into the theater that afternoon had no idea that critical safety features were unfinished or missing. They were there for the joy, for the spectacle, for the afternoon at the theater. Most had brought their children because it was a winter break matinee after all. The house was filled with mothers and kids. It was so full that standing room tickets were oversold.
Oh no.
Patrons who were supposed to stand behind the last row of seats spilled forward down the aisles. The theater was overcrowded. And every one of those people believed that they were walking into a building that had been advertised as completely fireproof. It even said so right on the playbill. But fireproof is a misnomer.
Every pizza oven is fireproof.
Yeah. And the young men operating the spotlights knew that better than anyone. There were carbon arc lamps, powerful lights that produced illumination by creating an electric arc between two carbon rods. They were extremely bright and extremely hot. Temperatures at the arc could reach as high as 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit, and there were 8 of them mounted above the stage. But it would only take one. At that moment, only a single spotlight was in use, and it began to sputter and spark. And those sparks landed on the tormentor.
The tormentor?
And
What is that, like a mythological creature?
The tormentor is the curtain that blocks the audience view of the backstage area.
Why did they call it that? That's ominous as
I don't know.
The tormentor. We're standing behind you, a curtain, preventing you from seeing what's going on behind the scenes. The tormentor. Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And because the spotlight was positioned high above the stage, roughly 15 feet up in the air, the fire did not start low where it might have been easily smothered. It started high up on the fabric, because fire burns upwards. So when the light operator tried to slap out the flames, the fire raced beyond his reach quickly, climbing fast, feeding on the fabric and moving exactly where any fire wants to go, up. Now, there was a firefighter on duty backstage as required by the Chicago ordinances at the time, but it's worth asking what exactly he was expected to do.
Slap at things.
Because the standpipe system, a network of piping designed to supply water to hoses for firefighting, was another safety feature that remained incomplete when the theater opened. So there was no hose line available backstage. Instead, the firefighters' only means of suppression was kill fire.
What?
Kill fire was an extinguishing powder packaged in a tube. Now, the instructions specifically warned against sprinkling it. The idea was to forcefully fling the contents at the base of a fire so the powder could smother the flames by cutting off oxygen.
So they yeet the powder at the fire.
Yes. That method only works if the extinguishing agent lands directly on the seat of the fire and stays there. So when the backstage firefighter saw flames burning high above in the curtains, he grabbed what he had, tubes of kill fire, and raced up the catwalk.
Dude, that's badass, though, if you think about it. That's quite the scene that you're describing. This guy sounds awesome.
From there, he attempted to throw the powder at the fire, but it was useless. A suffocating agent can't do its job if it can't reach the fire, and when the fire is overhead, the powder simply falls away, never having an opportunity to smother it out.
Man, but he tried.
He did.
That was some valiant.
Meanwhile, on stage, the performance continued. The actors and actresses on stage continued their number even as some patrons began to notice the fire. And for a few critical moments, everyone kept believing the same thing.
They were just step ball changing.
That the fire was minor, that fires happened in theaters all the time, and that this building was fireproof, and so they were all safe. And as the fire began spreading into the flammable scenery, burning fragments of curtain and set pieces began raining down onto the stage.
Oh, hell no.
And that's when Eddie Foy realized that this was no longer a minor problem. Foy was on stage dressed in a costume with a red wig and pigtails.
Titties?
He didn't say anything about titties. And his very own son was sitting somewhere in the audience. As black smoke began rolling across the ceiling and patrons started to shift in their seats, Foy ran forward to address the crowd. He urged calm, he assured them that the situation would be brought under control, and he encouraged people not to panic. And for a moment it worked. Some patrons who had started toward the exits returned to their seats, trusting what they were being told. Trusting the performers, trusting the building, trusting the idea that this was all being handled. But it wasn't, not even close. And as the fire spread rapidly, he waited for the next safeguard to do what it was designed to do. The proscenium curtain. That asbestos curtain that was meant to drop and seal off the stage, separating the fire from the audience and protecting all of those people, especially those people in the upper balconies, from that toxic smoke and heat. It was supposed to buy them enough time to evacuate. But there was a problem. In fact, there were several. The boy assigned to operate the curtain that day was not the usual curtain operator. He hadn't been trained for the role. And in the confusion, he didn't even know which curtain was the proscenium curtain. He didn't know what to do. And as Eddie Foy waited for the curtain to drop, the fire only intensified. Flames climbed higher, smoke thickened, and Foy finally realized that waiting was no longer going to be a good option. Then he began urging the audience to begin evacuating, calmly, slowly, without panic, and to make their way toward the exits. But there was a second problem, an equipment failure. The front lights at the proscenium opening were mounted on a metal track and were designed to fold out of the way when they were not in use. But one side of the lighting enclosure failed to retract, and it remained partially extended, hanging directly in the path that the curtain would have to travel if and when it dropped. So the curtain couldn't descend fully. And the person who might have resolved all of this, the stage manager, the one who could have guided the curtain operator or ordered the full evacuation, well, he wasn't there. He was out running errands. On stage, Eddie Foy struggled to maintain a sense of calm as the urgency crept into his voice. And then finally, mercifully, the proscenium curtain began to lower. But those pesky front lights. The curtain descended only partway before catching on the protruding lighting enclosure, and it jammed roughly halfway down, leaving a wide opening below it. The barrier that was supposed to protect the audience was stuck. Up in the balconies, a different crisis was unfolding. The ushers had locked the balcony doors.
What?
They had been instructed to do so once the performance began to prevent patrons in the cheaper seats from slipping down to the more expensive sections during the show.
You're kidding me. Why? This is a way too common thing, man. You tight-ass mother...
Even where doors were not locked, some exits were effectively hidden. The building had been designed with aesthetics in mind, and certain exits were concealed behind heavy draperies so as not to disrupt the elegant interior with something as unsightly as a life safety feature. And there was one more critical failure. There had been no fire drills. The ushers had never been trained on what to do in an emergency.
All right, hold on a second for a minute. Mm-hmm. Are you telling me that, regular-ass movie theaters have, fire drills that they do?
Not while they're occupied, but the staff is supposed to have fire drills to be trained on what they're supposed to do in a fire to make sure everyone gets out.
So do they go through this, as an exercise? Do they practice run fire drills for the theaters?
They are supposed to.
I'm seriously curious.
They're supposed to. Whether they do or not, I can't answer that. No one's ever asked me to help with the theater fire drill. The ushers had never been trained on what to do in an emergency. So when patrons began demanding that the doors be opened, the ushers hesitated. They waited. They were waiting for official instructions to unlock the doors, and in a fire, waiting is deadly. On stage, cast members desperately tried to free the proscenium curtain, but it would not budge. They couldn't dislodge it. As they struggled, everything above them began to fail. Flaming scenery, hanging lights, sandbags used as counterweights. The ropes holding it all in place had burned through. What followed was a massive, thunderous collapse onto the stage. Sets, lights, and rigging all crashing down at once. The sound was overwhelming. And it was the moment backstage that reality finally caught up to everyone. That crash was the cue. Actors, stagehands, and the crew turned and ran, beating feet towards the nearest exit they knew would open, the massive stage door. These were large double doors that led directly into the alley behind the theater, and they were massive because they were used to roll large pieces of scenery and prop pieces into the theater. Behind them, the stage was no longer a performance space, it was a fully involved fire. And this is where things went from bad to horrific. Remember the smoke and heat vents? The single operational vent, the one over the rear of the auditorium, well, it opened when the heat and smoke rolling along the ceiling triggered it. But the other ones were bolted closed, so they never opened. The vents above the stage remained closed. And the proscenium curtain, the barrier meant to separate the fire from the audience, was stuck halfway down. And when the stage door opened, it created a wind tunnel. As the cast and crew fled through those large double doors into the alley, they unknowingly changed everything. That opening fed a massive rush of oxygen into a fully involved stage fire. Now the theater had all the elements of a functional chimney. Fresh air pouring in through the stage door, a partially blocked proscenium opening creating a wind tunnel, and that single open smoke vent at the rear of the auditorium pulling the air upward. The fire intensified instantly. Flames, heat, and thick black smoke were drawn out over the audience, pulled from the stage across the ceiling and toward that open vent. What had been a fire on the stage became a fire moving through the auditorium, and the people below it were trapped directly in its path. Many people in the balconies never made it out of the auditorium at all. They collapsed where they stood, overcome by the smoke and toxic fire gases as the smoke layer dropped rapidly into the occupied space. Others were still trying to escape. They pressed toward exits and ran into yet another failure. The exit doors swung inward instead of outward. As people pushed toward them, the doors were forced closed by the weight of the crowd itself. Bodies piled up against them, making the doors impossible to open, even for those who managed to reach them. What should have been a simple act, pushing through a door and stepping through it, became physically impossible. And in a space filling with smoke and heat, those seconds mattered. For those trapped on the upper-level fire escape, the one with no stairs down, help did come from across the street. Workers were in a neighboring building and were able to extend a ladder from an upper-floor window toward the escape. But as the first man began to cross, the ladder shifted on the icy window ledge, and he fell. And after that, they resorted to wooden planks, bridging the gap between the two buildings. And many people were rescued that way. But many others lost their footing, and some jumped, waiting for their chance to cross, falling into the alley below.
Oh, man.
Back inside the theater, some of the chorus girls became trapped as conditions worsened. They fled downward, eventually reaching the basement. There, the boiler room employees forced them up and out through the coal chute, pushing them out into the cold winter air. As firefighters arrived with horse-drawn wagons, they encountered yet another obstacle. The alley alongside the theater, where many people were still trapped on fire escapes, was too narrow to deploy their aerial ladders, and rescue efforts were slowed. They were complicated and in some cases made completely impossible by the building's surroundings. At the exits, conditions were just as grim. Patrons overcome by smoke inhalation collapsed in doorways and exit paths, and those behind them were forced to climb over piles of people in desperate attempts to escape. Outside, bystanders worked feverishly, pulling bodies free from the jammed exits, trying to clear pathways so others could get out. But it was chaos, and it was unfolding faster than they could help. And by the time the fire was out, the scale of what happened was impossible to immediately comprehend. Roughly 600 people were dead, though even that number would remain uncertain. Estimates varied then, and they still vary now. Mothers and children were separated in the rush to escape. Some parents survived while their children did not. Some children survived while their parents never came home. Families searched hospitals, police stations, and makeshift morgues, desperate for information in a city overwhelmed by loss. Chicago descended into chaos. There was no reliable way to determine exactly how many people had been inside the theater. Standing room tickets had been oversold. There was no accurate accounting of who had entered or who had escaped or who was still missing. Bodies were transported to multiple funeral homes across the city, sometimes before identification could be made. And in the confusion, victims were moved, misidentified, and in some cases exchanged between funeral homes, entirely compounding the trauma for families that were still trying to locate their loved ones. So even the dead could not be reliably counted. The city was grieving, angry, and demanding answers. But before there could be accountability, Chicago first had to face a much more basic question. How could something this catastrophic happen in a building that had been advertised as completely fireproof? That question, and what happened when officials tried to answer it, is where this story continues next week on Crime to Burn.
What's a circle jerk to you? Why is there toast involved?
No idea.
Clearly, you've never been involved with the inner circle. Kind of made listening to that band weird, knowing that.
A Perfect Circle? What band?
You know, the Circle Jerks?
No. There's just a band called the Circle Jerks?
Did you just crawl out from under a rock today?
I didn't know that.
I'm going to put my headphones on so I can hear this madness.
You were on your way to get a beer when you got distracted.
You know what? I think I also hit it with a wood tip earlier, too.
You gotta be careful where you put your wood tip.
Did you know that today is our wedding anniversary?
I was aware, yes. 11 years that you've put up with me.
Here, I'll put the boopity boop on it. Boop. And you can buy it for me later because you're my sugar mama. You say that, but look at that telescope over there. How much do you think I paid for that?
I don't remember.
But how much do you think I paid for it?
$30.
God, you're a cheap-ass, uptight white lady. What the hell, man?
I don't know. I don't remember.
Look at that. That's a piece of Newtonian marvel. Like,
I don't know. How much did you pay for it?
like $25.
Happy anniversary to you. Happy anniversary to you. Thanks for putting up with me for 11 years now. Happy anniversary to you. And let's face it, you put up with me for a lot longer than 11 years because you did meet me when I was only 6.
I didn't really have to put up with you, though.
No, not really. I mean...
Sort of chose to if I wanted to.
Yeah. Worked out for me pretty good.
I mean, sometimes I had to put up with you.
You did trick me into kissing you the first time.
Yeah. Good trick. I'm like the devil himself.
Played on my vulnerabilities.
Your vulnerabilities, such as?
The fact that I wanted to kiss you.
There's a key vulnerability that I exploited.
But if you guys haven't watched Violent Night...
That's hands down the most fantastic Christmas movie ever made, in my opinion.
It's pretty good. I love it.
I can't
Not for the whole family.
Bull crap. You'll have an Uncle Dave when I say you have an Uncle Dave. I need help in general.
On the way back, I asked the kid, like, why does it smell like horse in here?
They might have been transporting a tiny horse.
It smelled like a horse inside the car.
I want to say something like I understand, but that would be a lie. What horrible tale have you brought to hurt me with today?
Well, the reason why I chose to do it right here at the holidays is because the fire occurred
People were too happy.
December 30th, 1903.
So we need to remind them that horrible things happen during the holidays, not just your personal family trauma.
Right. And I haven't watched it this year since we're going to my parents' house. I figured I'd watch it with my mom. She likes it.
Y'all gonna have some hanky time together.
Let's not call it that.
Y'all gonna have some tissue time together.
That's not any better. Maybe you need to drink more.
Here, here.
Cheers.
Plus, none of those other guys have a third nipple.
You don't either, honey.
Well, I can dream.
It began. It didn't begin.
It almost began.
Whether caused by inexperience, malfunction, or inattention doesn't ultimately matter.
That's how most of my dates start.
Climbing a curtain overhead.
That climbed everything overhead. Or to completely give up on life.
Your likes, follows, comments, and shares help us survive the algorithmic maze and that growth.
I'm so excited. I think maze only has one syllable. It's a nice word. It's a nice word. No one's ever heard a word like that before. It's amazing. You think she's wrestling a weasel up there? Do you need help? Do you need help killing something?
Welcome to today's Animal Interruption. We live in a madhouse.
It's a compliment. I'm a little weaselly. I'm a beaver noodle. I think we could keep her.
We're keeping her. Even Winston wants to keep her. See, he agrees. Modern proscenium curtains are made from non-combustible fiberglass or cereal.
They're made from Chex Mix.
Modern proscenium curtains are made from non-combustible fiberglass or similar.
Raisin Bran.
And it was the moment backstage reality finally caught up to everyone. Nope. Let me try that again.
Oh, that's quite the afternoon, isn't it?
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas, mother. Put that in your stocking.
If you're attending a festive gathering this holiday season, please take a moment to locate the exits. Not just the one you came in through. All of the exits.
This episode is brought to you by Figgy Pudding.
I don't know what figgy pudding is.
It's pudding made of figs.
This episode brought to you by awkward moments at the holiday dinner table with Uncle Dave. He has opinions. They are loud. And no one asked.
I think our listeners should be committed to boning. Make babies. Don't pull out tonight.
Crime to Burn takes no legal responsibility for any consequences of following our advice. Are you going to be stuck in the car on a road trip this week? You should listen to our entire catalog. Twice. Be less traumatizing than Uncle Dave.
You son of a bitch.
It's a little weird because my dad's name is Dave.
Oh, I didn't think of that. We could change it to Uncle Ralph. Well, this is deteriorating. This episode is brought to you by very nervous Amazon drivers. My very friendly 90-pound dog just wants to be friends. He thinks your balls smell like bacon. He wants to wish you some holiday cheer. Making Amazon drivers nervous since 2024. Could you maybe whistle? Did you get mail, buddy? This episode's brought to you by Wet Dog Noses.
Good job scaring the UPS guy.
You did great, buddy.
He was like, I figured he was probably friendly, but he's really big and he probably could take off my leg if he wanted to.
Happy Hanukkah Ramadan.
And Festivus for the rest of us.
Damn right.
We'll see you next week. Crime to Burn is a production of Crime to Burn, LLC, where we light fires in your brain and not your buildings. All rights reserved. Still spiritually parched after this episode? It's okay, Steve believes in cross-pollination. Here's a trailer for a show we think deserves to infiltrate your ear holes, in a good way. Don't forget to leave a 5-star review before you go. Steve is watching.
They say the past was a simpler time. Kids rode their bikes till the streetlights came on. Neighbors looked out for one another, and everybody kept their doors unlocked. But for many families, this was not the reality. I'm Megan, host of A Simpler Time True Crime, where each week I revisit older unsolved cases from decades past. Disappearances, suspicious deaths, and stories that were never fully told. Through a victim and survivor-centered lens, I challenge the idea that a simpler time meant a safer one, and give voice to those left behind. Because time doesn't erase the need for answers. And every case deserves a second look. Tune in each week and subscribe to A Simpler Time True Crime wherever you get your podcasts.